West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
It is clear from multiple reports that Congressman Mo Brooks figures prominently in the events of January 6th. Most recently, Rolling Stone reported that Brooks was among several Republicans or their staffs who spoke with an organizer and a planner of the so-called Stop the Steal rally. And while NBC News has not independently verified that report, Brooks has also been implicated by pro-Trump organizer Ali Alexander in the planning of another rally at the Capitol that day. Now, Brooks is doing some damage control. He's denying that he was personally involved in planning the rallies of January 6th. But in the process, he's throwing his own congressional staff under the bus. In an interview with Alabama Local News, Brooks said he doesn't know whether his staff interacted with an organizer and a planner of the January 6th rally and other protests because he had not spoken to them about it. In other words, he's claiming ignorance of what his own staff was up to while he runs for cover. But Brooks also added this, quote, quite frankly, I'd be proud of them if they did help organize a First Amendment rally to protest voter fraud and election theft. It comes as D.C. police officer Michael Fanone urges the Select Committee to identify any members of Congress or their staff who may have participated.
I want to know if there were elected leaders, staff members who may have conspired in the activities of that day. I think that their constituents and the American people deserve to know if there were individuals who participated in sedition against this country.
With me now is Congressman Ted Lieu of California. He was an impeachment manager earlier this year. And Congressman, starting with Mo Brooks for just a moment, he's somebody who tried to lie and cover up what happened on January 6th. He falsely claimed that there's growing evidence that Antifa was involved, that it was orchestrated to sort of make Trump people look bad, etc. He hasn't exactly been an honest broker. What do you make of him throwing his staff under the bus?
Thank you, Jerry, for your question. Let me first say that I'm proud that my staff had nothing to do with the January 6th insurrectionist rally that led to the attack on the Capitol. What I want to know is, did Mo Brooks talk to his staff before the rally? Because he wore a bulletproof vest on January 6th. What did he know that none of us knew? And what caused him to wear that bulletproof vest in advance?
And I wonder if he issued bulletproof vests to his staff. Did he care enough about them to make sure they were protected? Have you heard any news about that?
I have not, but since he threw his staff on the bus, I would highly doubt he was trying to protect his staff. And I also note that we're about a year from last presidential election, and Mo Brooks and Republicans still cannot explain who stole the election nor how it was done. And that's because the election was not stolen. Trump simply lost.
Well, I mean, the going theory of people like Mo Brooks seems to be that it's not possible that Donald Trump lost because Joe Biden's voters, let's be frank, were people of color, and Donald Trump's voters were largely white and rural and looked like them. Here's Mo Brooks back in 2014 explaining what he thinks is sort of the grand design of Democrats in this country?
This is a part of the war on whites that's being launched by the Democratic Party. And the way in which they're launching this war is by claiming that whites hate everybody else. It's a part of the strategy that Barack Obama implemented in 2008, continued in 2012, where he divides us all on race, on sex, greed, envy, class warfare, all those kinds of things.
That's a little that characterization's a little out there.
But that is in effect what they're doing, though.
I just think that phraseology might not be the best choice.
I mean, when Laura Ingraham thinks you've gone too far on a racial topic, you might have gone too far. I mean, I wonder if you feel that even if the January 6th committee is able to give us all the facts of what happened, the fact that you have members of Congress who believe that the Democratic Party is waging a war on white people, and that if that's their fundamental belief, I wonder what you think. Even a very definitive report out of the January 6th committee, what impact will it even have on Republicans?
Joe Biden assembled a large, diverse coalition across America, and he beat Donald Trump by over 7 million votes. And that included white people, Asian people, black people, Hispanic people, all sorts of folks across America. So Mo Brooks is simply not telling the truth when he's trying to use a race war and how he characterizes this. What we're looking for is anyone who participated in the January 6th insurrection or helped plan it, and if they did, they should be investigated and they should have no place in Congress.
We know now that the White House has already said no to executive privilege. There is a contempt vote against Steve Bannon. The fight is on for that. Do you believe that members of Congress should be subpoenaed? People like Mo Brooks should also be subpoenaed by the commission.
Absolutely. Nobody should be above the law, not members of Congress, not former White House staff. And I note that in the Nixon tapes case, the whole point of the Supreme Court decision is that you cannot use executive privilege to shield information if there are crimes that are involved. And it's clear there were hundreds of crimes that were committed on January 6th. 140 police officers were injured.
And indeed, because you had officers injured, and these are the same officers who protect the staff and protect members such as yourself, do you believe that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Mo Brooks, who are still justifying what happened on January 6th, do you believe they should be expelled from Congress?
Marjorie Taylor Greene should not be in Congress at all. If you look at her recent statement, she basically is saying that January 6th was, quote unquote, just a riot. It was more than that. People died, police officers were brutalized. But she also justified it, saying that the Declaration of Independence was about overthrowing tyranny. I simply note that America was founded because we were breaking away from a monarchy, and then we established a constitutional republic, the same one we've had for hundreds of years. That was the same electoral college system that the framers used, that we used, and Donald Trump simply lost the electoral college and the popular vote. Marjorie Taylor Greene should not be in Congress if she is still disputing the results of the election and trying to justify the violent attack on our Capitol.
It is Wednesday, the 27th of October of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Yes, indeed. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Well, what a lot of news that has come up in just, a 24-hour period. We've got the Kyle Rittenhouse hearing. Well, actually, they're getting ready to start the hearing. The judge, I think that's what you call him, is setting the rules of evidence. And a lot of legal experts saying that the rules of evidence that he is setting could actually prevent any prosecution of that little Nazi murderer. And you know what I'm talking about. Apparently, the Kenosha residents who were killed, murdered by this Nazi murderer, who, I need to remind you, crossed state lines with an illegal gun. You can't call the people that he murdered victims, according to the judge. Why? because victim is too loaded. An alleged victim is its first cousin, according to the judge. When asked how the victims would be referred to in court, when asked by the prosecution, well, how will we refer to them then? And the judge said, well, looter, arsonist, rioter, those you can use those. So, in other words, the fix is in. And you got a cracker judge sitting on the bench who's been a cracker judge in other cases, and he's still on the bench. All right. And Jacob Blake, the kid that everybody was out in the streets protesting, the one who got put into a wheelchair because a cop shot him with his kids in the back seat. He got a 2-year term for previous disorderly conflict. Previous disorderly conflict. He spent 2 years in jail. And Rittenhouse crossed state lines with an illegal gun to join up with a militant white nationalist militia to roam the streets under the auspices of the police, according to the judge. He is ruling that a reasonable person would think, well, if the police gave him a bottle of water, as evidenced by this video right here, he must have thought that he was doing something good. Kill the commies. Kill the liberals. Kill the Jews. Kill the blacks. Kill the Asians. Kill the Mexicans, the Hondurans, etc., etc., etc. Kill the infirmed. Kill the gay. Kill, kill, kill. And the people who are saying, let's stop the killing, oh, they're looters, arsonists, and rioters. When it has been shown that the auto parts store that was set on fire was done by a cop. A Proud Boy cop. All right. The fix is in, and the little Nazi Jungen's going to get away with it, and he's going to be on Newsmax. Maybe Fox, but definitely on Newsmax. And ON, because AT&T has to get there. They put an investment into ON, and they need a return. Okay. Yep. So what are we going to do about it? They're already asking Charlie Kirk at a speech. Turning Point, USA. Sieg Heil. Somebody asked him, for the world to see. They just act normal. Like this is just normal. This audience member wanted to know, asking Charlie Kirk, when do we get to start killing people? We need to start killing these Democrats. With the emphasis on rats. We need to. They're stealing the elections. Because we count the votes, that's called stealing the elections. And when more people vote for our side, that's called stealing the election. So they have to take up arms and kill people to get their way. And they think that they're Americans. They're Nazis. And what did Charlie Kirk say? I guess to give him the benefit of the doubt, he equivocated. But his equivocation was more on the side of just, hold your powder. Keep your powder dry. We're going to go after him. We'll give you the word. And then the Unite the Right rally Nazis. They're in court. Some of them are representing themselves. But their lawyers aren't much better than either. They're not really the cream of the crop, shall we say, yet. The lawyers, the opposing counsel, now you have to understand Jeff Sessions would not bring any charges against these Nazis for what they did in Charlottesville. So it has to be done under the auspices of a civil case to extract money and bankrupt these Nazis like they did to Metzger back in the day. You know Metzger, guy from San Diego, neo-Nazi from San Diego, who had a neo-Nazi group of kids, I guess you could call them, kids into their 20s, but, skinheads. And they killed a black kid in Portland, Oregon. And Metzger and his operation were sued into bankruptcy, out of business. And that's why a lot of people don't remember Metzger anymore. And what counsel is doing against the Unite the Right rally organizers and participants is to sue them into being non-entities, as they should be. Cancel them. We're talking about cancel culture now, and that's why we need a cancel culture. If you don't punch the Nazis, they're going to kill you. They're talking about it. They can't wait. I will say that as soon as we start talking about protecting ourselves against all these Nazis, we'll be thrown in jail for fomenting violence. Oh, you were asking for it. You were asking for those attacks on you. Really? I was? Yeah, you said you had to protect yourself. You know the basketball rules of justice? The person who reacts to the foul is the one who gets called on the foul or with the foul. So the Unite the Right rally defendants, shall we say, are now complaining that opposing counsel are Jews. As Mel Gibson would say, do you have a dog in the game? Huh? Are you a Jew? Is that why it matters to you? They already were ruled by the judge because they wanted to limit the use, the comparison to the Holocaust or any reference to the Holocaust. They wanted to make that, verboten. Yikes. So Germanic. So Teutonic. And these Unite the Right rally defendants, these neo-Nazis, are complaining about opposing counsel being Jews like that's a normal thing to complain about. But Judge, they're Jews. They're baby eaters. They drink the blood of babies. All right. Hopefully that judge, already the judge has ruled against, look, they're going to make references to the Holocaust. You were the ones circling the only synagogue in Charlottesville. The only synagogue with tiki torches and, I don't know, it looked like more than a few hundred neo-Nazis in khaki pants and polo shirts. They surrounded that, just like in the old Bürgermeister days of old, in a Germanic country in a Europe far, far away. They circled the only synagogue chanting, "Jews will not replace us." Over and over and over. And they beat up an old Jewish lady. And they beat up other people. And they intimidated a whole town. And then the next day, they ran over people that they talked about they wanted to run over. Not specific people, but they were itching to be able to drive their cars through all those commie, black, lesbian, evil baby eaters. But Judge, that lawyer is a Jew. Punch the Nazis. If the only way we can punch a Nazi is to take him to court in a civil trial, that's how you punch the Nazi. But we got to do something. They want to kill us. And we're acting like, oh, they're just joking. No, they're not. They are not. Cross burnings are just around the corner. You just know it. It'll be a civic event in some parts of the country. Oh, yeah. Have a little Christmas cheer down by the cross burning. We'll open up gifts from Santa. White Santa. Santa is white, kiddies. Don't you forget it. My God. All right. It's almost enough to make you want to move to Canada. The only problem is that Canada has their right-wing Looney Tunes, too, wanting to blow everything up. There's nowhere to go. The only thing we can do is purge ourselves of these Nazis. And I'm telling you, it's not going to be with zinc and yogurt purging them out the bottom of our feet. It's not going to work that way. I'm serious. It takes something a little bit more, shall we say, effective. Shall we say. All right, well, enough of that rant. You know where we're going with it, because we'll just get into, the curated part of the show, which we curate for you every day, at least 5 days a week, when West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is broadcasting. Oh, and podcasting, too. But there's no time involved in podcasting. It can go on forever. You can listen to it at your heart's content, whenever. Well, at the top, we started off with, Mo Brooks has been blaming his staff for his involvement in the January 6th insurrection. He says he was not a part of. Well, I want to know, why was he wearing a bulletproof vest then? Everybody wants to know that. And who planted the pipe bombs? They weren't discovered until what? 6 p.m. the next day? 3 p.m. the next day? And Marjorie Taylor Greene is accusing Nancy Pelosi of not doing anything about the pipe bombs no one knew about for later on the next day during the whole insurrection. I'm saying, I don't know. It looks like Marjorie Taylor Greene walking those bags of pipe bombs around, but maybe not. Maybe not. Anyway, on the rest of the menu here at the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, because there's still the chef's table, do not forget. Well, starting off here, the popular burger chain In-N-Out is out of another California county after refusing to enforce COVID-19 vaccination rules again. Federal wildlife agencies are set to cancel more environmental rollbacks under Trump. The good work keeps on working. And Congress has planned a series of fixes for the U.S. military's stolen weapons problems. And those problems end up in illegal criminal activity. Where did Rittenhouse get his military-grade weapon? Oh, I don't know. We can only speculate. After the break, we move to the chef's table. See, I told you. Where 150 people were arrested in a joint U.S.-Europe darknet drug probe. They think they can hide, but they won't be able to run. And a Brazilian Senate committee recommended Bolsonaro face criminal charges over COVID. Now do the U.S. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link right there by the social media scroll. And the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across the page to the left, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page, and you know what that means. Yep, we have bills to pay. We have software to purchase again, and we have hardware that needs to be upgraded on a seemingly continuous basis. This planned obsolescence is really making me angry. Really. So that stated, the world is how the world is, and we have to pay our bills. And we make these entreaties to you because even though the bulk of how we pay our bills comes out of our own wallets, we would still be unable to do it without you. And thank you for your generosity. Now, we talk about a cup of coffee. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds our way, once a month, we're able to pool those dollars and stretch them beyond compare, even on the quantum level. We have that kind of experience. And then we are able to pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue this resistance against, well, it really is a full-blown Nazi takeover now, isn't it? We can't let it happen. And we're doing our part, and we do take it seriously, even though there's somewhat of a jocular attitude around here. We'll just call it gallows humor because, hey, that's how you survive. Laugh in the face of adversity. And then make sure the adversity is taken care of in a reasonable way so that everybody can live in peace, love, and harmony. And thank you for your generosity in allowing us to do so. We're going to do it. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that, and so much more, too. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press, and, well, it's by staff at the Associated Press. Another California county closed down an In-N-Out restaurant on Tuesday yesterday because the popular burger chain refuses to enforce COVID-19 vaccination rules. Contra Costa County health officials indefinitely shut the Pleasant Hill restaurant after it ignored repeated warnings to verify that customers who wanted to dine indoors had vaccination cards or proof they had tested negative for the virus in the past 72 hours. The county has issued several warnings and fines to 4 local In-N-Out restaurants, including 2 in Pinole and San Ramon. Public health authorities see vaccination enforcement requirements as vital tools in slowing COVID-19 at a time when 1,500 or more Americans are dying each day from the virus. However, In-N-Out, based in Irvine, California, Orange County, California, has consistently refused to heed the requirements.
We refuse to become the vaccination police for any government. It is unreasonable, invasive, and unsafe to force our restaurant associates to segregate customers into those who may be served and those who may not.
Well, you know what? You have a drive-through. The unvaccinated go through the drive-through. In fact, the vaccinated ones go through the drive-through too, because I'm not stepping into your store. I don't care how good your burgers are. But that's just my opinion. This reporter's opinion. On October 14th, the only In-N-Out in San Francisco was closed for several days after repeatedly refusing to follow that city's public health mandate. The restaurant on Fisherman's Wharf reopened last week, but is supposed to only offer takeout and outdoor dining. However, the city's Department of Public Health is investigating a complaint that it continues to permit indoor dining. So in other words, In-N-Out burgers are a vector that we need to quarantine. Brown of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. President Joe Biden's administration announced yesterday, Tuesday, plans to cancel 2 environmental rollbacks under former guy Donald Trump, because he doesn't deserve the P word ever. And those rollbacks limited habitat protections for imperiled plants and wildlife. The proposal to drop the 2 Trump-era rules by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service is part of a broad effort by the Biden administration to undo regulations that Democrats and wildlife advocates say favored industry over the environment. The designation of lands and waters as critical for the survival of vulnerable species can limit mining, oil drilling, and other development. Yes, indeed, that's what it's supposed to do. That's made the designations a flashpoint for conflict between environmental and business interests. Well, you know what? The reason we have the environmental interests is to keep the business interests from destroying the environment for a buck. Industry groups and Republicans in Congress have long viewed the Endangered Species Act as an impediment to economic development. You mean plunder. Under Trump, they successfully lobbied to weaken the law's regulations with changes that gave added weight to economic development and other interests because a kickback is a kickback. The Trump administration changes had backing from an array of industry groups that said economic impacts had not been given enough consideration in past U.S. government wildlife decisions. Actually, it is. The impact of your denuding a forest has a grave economic impact on the future of the world, and you can put a monetary amount to that, and they do. The Biden administration officials said a reevaluation of the Trump policy showed them to be problematic because they limited the government's ability to advance conservation by protecting areas where plants and animals are found. Assistant Secretary for Fish and Wildlife and Parks, Shannon Estes, said the proposal would bring the endangered species law into alignment with its original intent and purpose, protecting and recovering America's biological heritage for future generations. Kristen M. Hall and Justin Pritchard of the Associated Press bring us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Congress is set to force America's armed services to keep better track of their guns and explosives, imposing new rules in response to an AP investigation that showed firearms stolen from U.S. bases have resurfaced in violent crimes. Under the proposals, the Department of Defense would tell both lawmakers and civilian law enforcement authorities more about guns that vanish from military armories, shipments, and warehouses. Overall, the Associated Press has found that at least 2,000 firearms from the Army, Marines, Navy, or Air Force were lost or stolen during the 2010s. Who was president then? It wasn't his fault. I wonder why they were stolen so easily. Even as guns kept disappearing, the DoD in recent years stopped advising Congress of most losses or thefts. Recent years? You mean during the Trump years? Just curious. That was one finding of an investigation which showed how assault rifles, pistols, armor-piercing grenades, and other weapons have made their way onto the nation's streets. Lawmakers in both the House and Senate responded by writing stricter accountability into each chamber's version of the National Defense Authorization Act. That bipartisan, must-pass legislation sets policy priorities for the Pentagon. In coming weeks, lawmakers will hammer out differences between the two Defense Authorization Act versions as the legislation marches toward the president's desk. Marches? For example, the Senate envisions more reporting to the FBI, while the House focuses on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. In interviews, military officials have acknowledged numerous problems with how they keep track of weapons through the military's vast supply chains. When the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, told our senators in June that he would seek a systemic fix within the DoD, regardless of what Congress did. Spokespeople for the Army and Marines have said their service branches are making changes to how they account for weapons. Those internal efforts have not persuaded some lawmakers. The lawmakers requested a progress briefing by November 19th. Spokespeople for the Army, Marines, Navy, and Air Force said the branches would respond directly to the committee. The letter also focused on a technology that some units of the Air Force and Army have used to track guns, but that could let even low-tech enemies detect U.S. troops when embedded in military guns. Thin radio frequency identification tags, RFIDs, as the technology is known, can streamline weapon counts and distribution, but field testing for the AP showed that outside armories, the electronic signals the tags emit could become an unwanted tracking beacon from distances greater than some armed services seem to realize. The Office of the Secretary of Defense called the tracking potential for enemies a significant security problem, and under questioning, the AP, or the Navy, told AP it would abandon the technology in weapons. Still, RFID tags are used in many aspects of military logistics, and lawmakers on the committee asked the Pentagon to detail how widely the technology is deployed and to explain the security risks those uses bring. Well, that brings us to our break. And let's go to our break. And when we get back from that said break, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Medieval Me Too. At first glance, alpha male director Ridley Scott may not seem the most obvious choice to helm a true life tale of 14th century betrayal, rape, and revenge that led to the last legally sanctioned duel in France. After viewing The Last Duel, though, it's hard to imagine another director who could have done better. The movie involves a knight, Jean, played by Matt Damon in possibly his best performance to date, and his frenemy, Jacques, played by an equally strong Adam Driver, who have a dispute over land and court position, and ultimately a claim that Jacques raped his wife, Marguerite, played by Killing Eve's Jodie Comer. Told from the viewpoints of the three main characters, the plot calls to mind the 1950 Kurosawa classic Rashomon, which also took place in feudal times and posed questions as to what really happened. However, while Rashomon seems anchored in the past, The Last Duel has a contemporary feel, especially as to how it deals with the treatment of Marguerite by male authority figures, the only authority figures there were. Along with Jacques, Marguerite literally finds herself on trial, where past comments she made about Jacques' appearance are used against her to refute the allegations. And while Jean is genuinely upset, it's reminded that in this era, rape was considered a property crime, with the victim being the husband, father, or other male guardian of the woman. If that makes you upset, well, that's the point. The cast here also includes a hard-to-recognize Ben Affleck in strong support as a libertine aristocrat. With brilliant cinematography, impressive set design, and close-up action shooting, The Last Duel was one to catch on the big screen. It's a memorable film that reminds us while lots has changed in 700 years, some things haven't. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Exactly 1,000 years ago, in the year 1021, a Viking or two or three likely wandered around the very northern tip of Newfoundland, cutting down trees.
Clearing a particular spot, or for gathering wood that might have been used as timber for construction of some type, or perhaps for boat repair. They were very careful to obviously make sure their ships were seaworthy.
Michael D. is a geoscientist at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. He says it's not news that Vikings made it to North America around this time. Scientists and scholars have surmised as much from archaeological remains in Newfoundland and by scrutinizing ancient texts, like the Icelandic sagas.
One is not really sure how literal one can take the Icelandic sagas. They contain a lot of not only inaccuracies, a lot of things that are obviously fantastical. Things like dead people speaking to them and so on.
But now Dee and his colleagues have been able to come up with a precise date, the year 1021, based on evidence these Norse visitors left behind, specifically a stump, a log, and a branch. Wood anatomists have determined that certain surfaces of that wood must have been cut by metal blades. That's a Viking technology the local indigenous people are not known to have shared. And Dee's team was able to use a cosmic occurrence, an extraordinary shower of high-energy particles from space around the year 993 to date the felling of the trees. You see, that shower of cosmic rays created an abundance of radiocarbon. When taken up by the trees, it left a lasting signature in the tree rings, giving the scientists a key to pinpoint the year 993 in the 3 wood samples, using radiocarbon dating.
And then you see all you have to do is count the rings from there to the edge. You have to know where the edge is, the bark edge, and then you'll know that was the last growth year of the tree, or the felling date of the tree. And it just so happened that in all 3 cases, that was exactly the same year, 1021 AD.
The details are in the journal Nature. The year 1021 therefore marks the first time we know of that Europeans set foot in the Americas. But as the authors write, it also marks, quote, the earliest known year by which human migration had encircled the planet.
Ever since moving out of Africa through Europe and Asia and across the Americas, nobody had got across the Atlantic Ocean. So by this date, we know that the Atlantic Ocean was crossed for the first time.
But, as we know, it wouldn't be the last. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
As fall turns to winter, the flu season will be upon us in force. The best way to avoid influenza is to get immunized. Everyone 6 months and older should be vaccinated. Those at increased risk for flu complications include children under the age of 5 and adults 65 and older, people with chronic health problems such as heart disease, asthma, and diabetes, and pregnant women. To get your annual flu vaccine, see your healthcare provider or go to a pharmacy, grocery store, or clinic in your area. If you get influenza, talk with your healthcare provider right away about antiviral medication. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
After the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th insurrection subpoenaed Trump loyalist Steve Bannon to provide testimony and documents, Bannon stonewalled, refused to comply, and so the House, in response, has found him in criminal contempt. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Bannon, at Trump's direction, has invoked executive privilege. Executive privilege, words that do not appear in the Constitution, stems from the doctrine of separation of powers, and encompasses the idea that the executive, the president, should be able to receive unvarnished advice from other government employees, cabinet members, for example, and those communications should be privileged. But Bannon has not been a government advisor to Trump since the summer of 2017. Whatever Bannon told or wrote or advised Trump or others about January 6th was not in a role as a governmental advisor. And importantly, as the Supreme Court has made clear, information about criminal conduct is not shielded by executive privilege. Bannon, on his radio show on January 5th, the day before the violent insurrection, informed his listeners, quote, "All hell is going to break loose tomorrow." The House is saying that it has the right and obligation to find out how Bannon knew that. But because the House has no enforcement mechanism, it's up to the Department of Justice to decide whether or not to prosecute Bannon for contempt of Congress. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
If you're a corporate employee, you know that something unpleasant is afoot when top executives are suddenly issuing statements about how committed they are to their employees, making sure that all of them are treated with dignity and respect. For example, the PR chief of a global outfit named Teleperformance, one of the world's largest call centers, was recently going on and on about how, quote, "we value our people and their well-being, safety, and happiness." Why did the corporation feel such a desperate need to proclaim its virtue? Because it's been caught in a nasty scheme to spy on its own workers. Teleperformance, a $6.7 billion global behemoth that handles customer service calls for Amazon, Apple, Uber, etc., saves money on overhead by making most of its 380,000 employees around the world work from their own homes. That can be a convenience for many workers, but a new corporate policy, first imposed in March on thousands of its workers in Colombia, is an Orwellian nightmare. Teleperformance is pressuring them to sign an 8-page addendum to their employee contracts, allowing corporate-controlled video cameras, electronic audio devices, and data collection tools to be put in their homes to monitor their actions. "I work in my bedroom," one employee noted. "I don't want to have a camera in my bedroom." Neither would I, and I doubt that Teleperformance's $20 million a year CEO would allow one in his mansion. Uglier yet, the privacy-obliterating contract requires that even the children of employees can be spied on at home. Nonetheless, the Colombian worker signed because her supervisor said she could lose her job if she refused. Of course, Teleperformance Inc. assures us that the data it collects on children is not shared elsewhere. But how do we know that? Trust us, they say. This is Jim Hightower saying, do you? Howdy-ho, folks. Thanks for tuning in and sharing my weekly commentaries. Also, please join me for a live web show I host every other Tuesday, the Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour at the Chat and Chew Cafe. You can join the action live online as I chat with grassroots leaders and progressive sparklies from around the country. Go to hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew to find out about upcoming guests and watch past episodes. That's hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1948. That was the day that a thick yellow fog rolled over the town of Donora, Pennsylvania, just south of Pittsburgh. Donora was a mill town, nestled in a valley on the banks of the Monongahela River. By 1948, the town had grown to 14,000 people who came to work in the town's steel mills and the Donora Zinc Works. For years, the local residents had complained about the pollution that spilled from the plants. Smog was a regular occurrence, but this fog was even worse than usual. A layer of cold air was trapping a noxious blend of nitrogen dioxide, sulfuric acid, and fluoride pollution. 24 hours passed, and still the fog grew denser. The police and local doctors began to receive reports of people having difficulty breathing. The fog had become so thick that residents could not see to drive. For 5 days, the smog hung over the town until a rain began to break it up. Nearly half of the town's residents became ill. 20 died. U.S. Steel refused to take blame for the fog, even though they continued to run the plant as the deadly toxins continued to build. According to a 2010 article by the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, despite the efforts of industry to cast the tragedy as an act of God, the fatalities in Donora received national attention. The event changed the way air pollution was viewed, moving it rapidly from an aesthetic issue to a public health concern, and spurred local, state, and federal officials to control toxic air pollution. In 2008, a smog museum opened with the motto, "Clean air starts here."
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is 51 degrees Fahrenheit, with foggy conditions, and we'll have a lot of clouds early with peaks of sunshine expected late, with highs near 65, considerably warmer than yesterday. And we had a bit of rain yesterday, and it looks like we'll be drying out, so to speak, for today and part of tomorrow. Partly cloudy overnight with lows in the upper 40s. Winds will remain light and variable through the day and night. And through tomorrow, where we will be partly cloudy with highs around 71. Winds light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon now stands at 232,048, and the deceased remains confirmed at 310. Ragweed pollen is rated low right outside the window in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 24 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.27 inches. Visibility is less than half a mile, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 62 and partly cloudy. Paris is 62 and sunny. Rome is 70 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 48 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 51 and clear. Hong Kong is 75 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 60 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 66 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is 58 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Michael Basalmo of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Law enforcement officials in the U.S. and Europe have arrested 150 people and seized more than $31 million in an international drug trafficking investigation stemming from sales on the darknet, the Justice Department said. The arrests are connected to a 10-month investigation between federal law enforcement officials in the U.S. and Europol in Europe. Prosecutors allege those charges are responsible for tens of thousands of illegal sales in the U.S., the United Kingdom, Australia, Bulgaria, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. The Justice Department says investigators have seized over $31.6 million in cash and virtual currency and 45 guns. The darknet is a part of the internet hosted with an encrypted network and accessible only through specialized anonymity providing tools, most notably the Tor browser. Investigators also recovered a slew of illegal drugs, including counterfeit medication and opioid pills, along with more than 152 kilograms of amphetamine, 21 kilograms of cocaine, and 32.5 kilograms of MDMA. Those arrested include 65 people in the U.S., 47 in Germany, 24 people in the United Kingdom, 4 in Italy, 4 in the Netherlands, 3 in France, 2 in Switzerland, and 1 person in Bulgaria.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Deborah Alvarez of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A Brazilian Senate committee recommended yesterday, Tuesday, that Bolsonaro, the president, face a series of criminal indictments for actions and omissions related to the world's second highest COVID-19 death toll. The 7-4 vote was the culmination of a 6-month committee investigation of the government's handling of the pandemic. It formally approved a report calling for prosecutors to try Bolsonaro on charges ranging from charlatanism and inciting crime to misuse of public funds and crimes against humanity, and in doing so, hold him responsible for many of Brazil's more than 600,000 COVID-19 deaths. The president has denied wrongdoing, and the decision on whether to file most of the charges will be up to Prosecutor General Augusta Aras, a Bolsonaro appointee who is widely viewed as protecting him. The allegation of crimes against humanity would need to be pursued by the International Criminal Court. Regardless of whether charges are filed, the report is expected to fuel criticism of the divisive president, whose approval ratings have slumped ahead of his 2022 re-election campaign. Well, good. And that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on. And we will meet up tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.